Thailand. Nestled in the heart of Southeast Asia, the Kingdom of Thailand has long been notable for its rich history and culture, a thriving tourism industry, and delectable cuisine. The tropical climate and fertile soil has also led to Thailand's reputation as a leader in agricultural production. This highly competitive sector comprises a significant portion of the nation's GDP, over 10%, and employs over 40% of the workforce. The fruit industry in Thailand is particularly prominent due to the plethora of unique and highly sought-after produce. In northern Thailand, the cultivation of tangerines, a smaller, sweeter variety of the mandarin orange, has made the region famous and economically successful over the past 2 decades. Prosperity and rapid growth came at a cost, however, as the development of the industry led to concerns and conflicts over land, labor, and livelihood. The tangerine industry represents a multifaceted niche in the complex agricultural sector of Thailand, ripe for multidisciplinary research. We are students from the College of Idaho, who designed a research project centered around studying the political, economic, religious, and environmental aspects of the tangerine industry in the Phang River Valley of northern Thailand. Mentored by Professor Rob Dayley and funded by a grant through the Asia Network Freeman Student Faculty Fellowship Program, our team of 5 set out for Thailand in the summer of 2011 in order to complete our month-long on-the-ground research project. The Golden Triangle. Formed by the confluence of the Mekong and Rock rivers, this infamous region is where Thailand meets neighboring Burma and Laos. Only decades ago, it was a veritable hotbed of opium production, unchecked criminal activity, and drug trafficking. In recent years, tangerines have become an important cash crop throughout Chiang Mai province. Introduced in Qingdao, the first tangerine plantation was started by Ko Sang, a Bangkok native who brought the Kiawan variety from central Thailand 50 years ago. This is the original tangerine orchard, now managed by his son-in-law. Though the orchard has since expanded to include many new trees, the original trees still dot the hillside and produce tangerines as recently as 3 years ago. The first large-scale commercial tangerine grower in the Phang River Valley was Tanaton Orchard. Opened in 1971, the operation is still thriving today. The founder and CEO, Mr. Bontun Jirawattanakul, is notable for introducing the Sinampung, or special honey variety of tangerine. With its sweet taste, high juice content, easy-to-peel exterior, and low amount of pith, the Sinampung tangerine is a highly sought-after product. The unique combination of climate and soil in the Phang River Valley produce the characteristically sweet flavor of the Sinampung variety that cannot be mimicked in any other part of Thailand. Beginning in 1996, after floods in Thailand's previous center of tangerine production crippled yields, farmers throughout the Phang River Valley began to switch from their previous crops to the highly profitable Sinampung. As locals became consumed by tangerine dreams, orchards sprang up across the valley, and the Sinampung tangerines from Phang flooded the markets from Chiang Mai to Bangkok and beyond. At the height of tangerine production, Chiang Mai province alone boasted an impressive 100,000 acres devoted solely to tangerine cultivation. According to one local farmer, many started planting tangerines with the expectation of investing 1 to 2 baht per kilogram in order to earn a return of 10 to 12 baht per kilogram. A relatively small orchard of 20 acres could earn a farmer revenues of 400,000 American dollars per season. With this potential, it becomes very clear why the tangerine dream was so contagious. According to Dr. Cham Chuan Bunharong, director of the Institute for Sustainable Agricultural Communities, at its peak, everyone had at least some tangerine trees, and if they did not, they would be called lazy by others. Today, Tangerine boasts an impressive 10 orchards in Thailand, making up 4,000 acres. Here, at this packing house in Phang District, Tangerine Orchard cleans, waxes, sizes, sorts, labels, and finally packages each of their 9 varieties of tangerines. Over the years, Tangerine has improved production techniques through investments in new machinery from Europe. This increases the shelf life of the tangerines and beautifies the tangerine's exterior appearance. Tangerine's latest innovation is the seedless Sai Nam Pung, expected to reach markets across Thailand this year. Tangerine's main competitor, Sai Tong Orchard, began operating in 1991. They introduced their version of the Sai Nam Pung variety, the Honey Queen, in 1993. Today, Sai Tong runs 7 orchards with 3,750 acres of plantation area and employs 1,500 farm laborers with an additional 110 workers in their packing house. Currently, 80% of Tangerine and 90% of Sai Tong's products are for domestic consumption, while the remaining tangerines are exported, predominantly to China, Malaysia, and Singapore. Tangerines destined for China are often exported via truck and ferry across the Mekong through Laos. Here at Ching Kong, tangerines cross the border to Laos. The port has grown increasingly busy over the past few years with the construction of the new Asian Highway Network. This process generally takes 6 days. On an alternative 10-day route, tangerines are trucked to Thailand's eastern seaboard at the port of Lam Chabang near Bangkok, then shipped to Hong Kong. Since 1985, throughout the Asian economic boom, Thailand has experienced a significant growth in GDP. With rising incomes, the demand for goods like tangerines and other tropical fruits increased. In addition to general consumption, fruits often have ritual significance at Buddhist temples throughout the region. General demand for tangerines, both domestically and abroad, peaks each year at Chinese New Year. The Sai Nam Pung tangerine is especially popular for ancestral offerings placed in front of shrines. Etymologically, the Mandarin word for the tangerine is Jin Zhi. Jin means gold and is often associated with wealth. Zhi is a term that is often translated as lucky or auspicious. Thus, the tangerine is seen as a highly desirable fruit. While a portion of Phang tangerines are exported to China, the large population of Thais with Chinese ancestry, known as Sino-Thais, ensures that the demand for these tangerines will increase each winter around January and February during Chinese New Year. Wat Gut Loi and San Jiao Pra Khao Yai are Thai Chinese temples on Thailand's eastern seaboard that typify the ritual usage of tangerines. According to the locals, each year at Chinese New Year, hundreds make the steep trek to the top of the hill to offer oranges at San Jiao Prat Khao Yai, here on the island of Gotsi Chang. In order to maximize profits, Phang tangerine growers intentionally manipulate the largest harvest to coincide with Chinese New Year. Growers go to great lengths to ensure that the peels are unblemished in appearance. The bags seen here at Sai Tong orchards are secured around the fruit after 3 months of growth. and protect the peel so that these tangerines can be sold at a premium price for ancestral offerings. Company chairman and founder Dr. Payun Ponpipatnapong explains that the only difference between the premium varieties of tangerines and the standard ones are the appearance of the peels. The taste, he says, is the same. The tangerine industry has transformed the Thong River Valley, bringing wealth to some. But there is a bitter side to the sweet story of the Sinampung. As the industry boomed, the socio-economic and environmental toll on the region produced a different narrative. Tangerine dreams were instead tangerine nightmares. Attracted by the initial profits of their neighbors, many farmers with smaller landholdings invested in the tangerine industry, replacing their traditional crops because of the promise of fast wealth. With little government guidance, the market was flooded with tangerines, transforming the boom into a precarious economic bubble. By 2006, the bubble burst. Tacitly encouraged by the national government and local extension services, overproduction led to plummeting prices. Without the profit necessary to recover the high investment costs, many of the small and medium-sized growers were pushed out of the market. But oversupply is only one facet of the tangerine nightmare. The rapid growth of the tangerine industry caused dramatic environmental damage. Most visible and immediate was the deforestation carried out in order to provide new land for tangerine plantations. On the heels of Cold War-era policies that encouraged deforestation to root out a communist threat, Thailand's northern forests experienced a new threat in the guise of the Sinampung. By the 1990s, the government supported the deforestation via its zoning policy that partitioned the forest and made some so-called development zones in effect, giving the green light for clear-cutting and creation of agricultural land. Other forests were bought from the state by investors seeking to profit from both timber sales and the creation of agricultural land. By 2006, over 100,000 acres had become orchards in Chiang Mai province, and a substantial share of that was reclaimed from local forests that previously fulfilled many important ecosystem services. In addition to being wildlife habitats, these forests were a source of non-timber forest products, including food, mushrooms, medicinal herbs, bamboo, rattan, and others. Industry encroachment on the forest generated a strong local response. In the Thong River Valley, Pra Atakan Aneg Chantapanyo, abbot of Wat Kong Sila, has taken it upon himself to provide a voice for the affected villagers. In the words of Pra Atakan Aneg, the forest is the Dhamma. In Buddhism, it is forbidden to harm the forest. Buddha taught that planting a tree is a way of gaining merit. Thus, whoever maintains the forest experiences internal growth themselves. Pra Atakan Aneg's method of saving threatened trees involves a rather unique ceremony called Buat Duan Mai, in which he ordains an individual tree, or in some cases, an entire forest. He has been ordaining forests as a sign of protest since 1993. The site of an ordained forest is often determined based on its historical and religious significance. Some of the region's oldest and most symbolically important temples, dating back to the Lana Kingdom, can be found in the forests of Phang. This forest temple is located in the fourth forest that Pra Atakan Anek ordained, and by this time would have certainly been lost to orchard production if it had not been ordained. The process of ordaining a tree is very similar to that of ordaining a monk, including the presentation of the characteristic orange robes. In the case of trees, the orange cloth is wrapped around the trunk of the tree. While only humans can be ordained into the Sangha, this sanctifies the tree and marks it as a powerful symbol that commands reverence equal to that of a monk. Early on, Pra Atakan Anek and his followers were disorganized in their protests, but now they have created an NGO at Wat Kong Sila, which has garnered substantial support from the surrounding community, including the local radio station. Pra Atakan Anek has also witnessed an increase in military support, which has made the NGO extremely effective in promoting the protection of the forests. In a collaborative effort, Pra'atakananeg, along with members of the Thai military and children from a local school, are planting new seedlings in a deforested area. The goal is to pass on an attitude of respect for the forest to younger generations. A less immediate, albeit just as egregious, effect of the tangerine industry on the environment is the use of synthetic pesticides in fertilizer. The Sainampung is one of the most demanding crops worldwide, with an almost insatiable hunger for nitrogen and water. According to Dr. Chomchuan Bonarong, if farmers were to grow this fruit with organic fertilizer only, they would need the manure of roughly 1 pig per tree. At 200 trees per acre, this means 5,000 pigs or more would need to be fed and sheltered for a medium-sized orchard. Indeed, many farmers lamented that while a young tree in its prime may yield 100 kilograms of tangerines, the soil will be depleted of nutrients to such an extent that within 20 years, that same tree will produce no more than 20 kilograms of fruit at best. Due to high fertilizer costs, many tangerine entrepreneurs were forced to recognize just how demanding the Sainampung variety is on soil and wallet alike. Tangerines are also highly susceptible to a number of pests, requiring frequent application of insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides. These chemicals have a number of extremely dangerous side effects to flora, fauna, and human health. Pesticides are highly toxic to aquatic life, and runoff from fields entails rampant destruction to marine ecosystems. Environmental effects aside, these pesticides have a direct impact on human health. Laborers who apply pesticides several days of the week complain of skin issues, headaches, and dizziness. A report by the Institute for Sustainable Agricultural Communities in Chiang Mai documents 26 diseases total induced by close contact with pesticides, afflicting the nervous system, respiratory system, and skin. Accounts from orchard workers bear witness to the dangers posed by the chemicals utilized. This day laborer we met near Phang showed us his most recent skin burn suffered from pesticide application. He also explained why the hot and humid weather aggravates the issue, saying most workers will take off their gloves and head masks during the course of the day because it is very uncomfortable to work with them in the heat. Their employers, he says, rarely insist that workers wear protective gear, even when provided. All the workers we questioned emphasized the lack of on-site medical facilities or compensation in the case of a work-related injury or an illness. Burmese migrants are an integral component of the tangerine industry and its many problems. Due to the repressive situation that faces most of the citizens of Burma, many have fled to neighboring Thailand for asylum over the past 2 decades. A significant portion of these refugees, especially those residing in the north, end up as day laborers on large farm plantations, and tangerine orchards are no exception. Most refugees enter Thailand illegally. Some receive limited work permits, but many do not have any recognized form of citizenship from the Thai government. Thus, they remain an invisible demographic with very little protection from exploitation and harm. On the plantations, Burmese workers are limited to the lowest level jobs, including spraying pesticides. Employment is often unsteady. For many, they must wait at an arranged spot each day and hope that a truck comes to pick them up and take them to work. If the truck does not come, they do not work, and are thus not paid. If the truck does come, they are piled into the bed and forced to stand as they head off to a long day of heavy work in the tropical heat and humidity of the tangerine orchards. It would seem that Thai plantation owners appear to treat migrants differently based on their ethnic group. Representatives from both Tanatan and Saitong, for example, stressed multiple times that they prefer to employ Shan, a group of Burmese that is ethnically related to the Thais. Pre-existing stereotypes in Thai society regarding other Burmese ethnic groups contribute to discriminatory employment practices. In general, Burmese workers are paid less than minimum wage, as low as 90 baht per day, equivalent to approximately $3 American, a figure almost half of the legal minimum wage in Chiang Mai province. Many of these migrants have trouble speaking and reading Thai. They are less likely to understand written warning labels or verbal cautions when compared to a native citizen. Unable to understand the harmful health implications of chemical exposure, these migrants are more likely to forego the uncomfortable protective gear. Overproduction, environmental degradation, migrant labor. These realities have tempered the dreams initially associated with tangerines. Within each of these problems runs the common thread of insufficient governance. Agricultural extension services seemingly failed to both preempt the collapse of the tangerine market in the mid-2000s and provide relief to those farmers who were burned in the process. Both government zoning practices and a lack of oversight for safe pesticide use have generated negative environmental consequences. And lastly, the inequitable treatment of migrant workers is tolerated by authorities who give deference to private industry. Looking at the last decade, the Thai government has arguably been the most active not in any of the areas mentioned above, but in forging international trade agreements. Faced with the ever-present reality of globalization, the question then becomes, to what extent is the transformation of these northern Thai districts connected to economic globalization? Under the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, China Free Trade Agreement of 2003, any two countries could list specified groups of products for immediate tariff reduction. One of these groups was fresh fruit, and in the fall of 2003, a Thai-Chinese bilateral trade agreement reduced tariffs on fruit to 0%. Thailand was the only country of all 10 members of ASEAN to exercise these early harvest measures with China. During an interview with Supit Atakun, the director of the Department of Extension Services for Chiang Mai Province, he reported significant growth in the tangerine industry, especially in the districts of Phang, Ma'ai, and Jaibargan in the early 2000s, with a reduction in production over the last 5 years. In order to explain the reduction, the director directly implicated the free trade agreement, noting that a sizable increase in Chinese citrus imports has happened over the last 5 years. However, there are those persons who posit that the free trade agreement with China did not substantially affect trade. Instead, increased fertilizer prices and bad investment strategies were cited as alternative causes for low prices and the near elimination of small orchards. While on the ground in Thailand, most of the interviews we conducted yielded a variety of disparate opinions regarding Thai-China trade. Thus, a general concurrence on how and to what extent the Thai tangerine market has been affected by the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement is difficult to surmise. The full extent of rapid trade liberalization, therefore, will perhaps only fully be realized in hindsight. The negative environmental and socio-economic impacts of the tangerine industry are startling, yet they have also inspired some positive changes in the area. The great toll taken by the industry on the local environment has induced collective action and civil society mobilization. This has led to an increased political consciousness among villagers, such as those in San Sai, home of Phra Atagan and Egg. Their activism in the tangerine issue has spilled over into other areas of regional and national interest. Within the industry, Saitong responded to public outrage and now utilizes the integrated pest management practices on their orchards. The company also received the Good Agricultural Practices and Good Manufacturing Practices certifications. These methods serve to ameliorate the worst effects of mass tangerine production. Additionally, the downturn of tangerine prices in 2006, coupled with increasing fertilizer costs and widespread root disease, led many small and medium-sized farmers to substitute tangerines for more ecologically appropriate crops, such as mango, papaya, and banana. Fewer growers, along with changing methods, have resulted in decreased chemical inputs and pollution in the Phang River Valley. During our interviews with representatives from Tanatan, we learned that northern Thailand's largest producer of tangerines has now expanded operations into neighboring Laos and Burma. The motivations for expansion can possibly be explained by one, if not all, of the issues previously discussed. A desire to profit from international demand, the allure of even cheaper labor, the increasingly depleted soil conditions in Thailand, and substantial resistance from local communities and their leaders. The question then becomes, Will the problems of rapid agricultural expansion be replicated in the fresh soil of these new countries? Will Laos and Burma experience similar economic, environmental, and labor issues as did the Phong River Valley of northern Thailand? Will the tangerine industry trigger responses from Burmese and Laotian villagers similar to those of northern Thailand? And finally, will those political and agricultural developments that have taken place in Thailand persist and further evolve?